So after many years of rampant speculation, the Persona 3 remake has finally been announced. That's good, right? If you somehow haven't heard the news, Persona 3, the beloved PS2 JRPG, is finally getting a modern remake. It's called Persona 3 Reload. Get it? Because, you know, they shoot themselves. It's been what could only be described as a roller coaster of emotions following the rumor mill surrounding this game. From a random dude proclaiming its existence in a forum, to Atlus surveys, to actual internal gameplay footage being leaked to the public, people have been waiting for this to be revealed for a very long time. And for what it's worth, this is understandable. Persona 3 is a really good game and a lot of people really love it, myself included. It was the first game to introduce the calendar system and the day-to-day life simulator mechanics, which are now considered to be the staple of the series. However, as I've mentioned before, the Persona series grew and improved with each new installment, and this game in particular, being the first of its kind, can feel kinda dated. So the idea of a remake that brings the game up to date to the modern standards of the series just makes sense. And listen, Atlus knows this. They've known for a while. It's just that they seem to live in their own plane of existence disconnected from the rest of the world and don't seem to fully understand exactly what their audience expects from them. But we'll get to that. You see, Atlus is known to do this thing where they do re-releases of their own games. And this is not just exclusive to Persona games. No, they do this a lot, to the point where it's become kind of expected at this point. Maybe they add some originally cut features or they add new story content, and sure, that can be hit or miss, but in general, they just add more to a game that was already good to begin with. The problem is that this business model essentially renders the original games obsolete. And why do I mention all this? Well, Persona 3 is an interesting situation where there's 3 different versions of it, unlike most Atlus re-releases. The original game came out on PS2 in 2006, but a year later, a new version called Persona 3 FES also came out on PS2 that added a lot of small quality of life features, a new social link with Aigis, who is a very important character in the story, and a whole new epilogue called The Answer that takes place after the events of the original game. So yeah, a substantial upgrade. Then, a year after that, Persona 4 came out, and in general, it did better than 3 both in sales and because it improves upon the basis set by 3. So, having learned from this experience, Atlus went back to Persona 3 and released a whole new version of the game with even more improvements carried over from 4 for the PSP, called Persona 3 Portable. And you'd think it would just be a simple improved port of the original game, and you'd be kinda right. However, they also added a whole new female playable character and the floodgates have been opened. Persona 3 Portable became the best-selling version of Persona 3. And this wasn't for nothing. No, Portable really adds a lot of quality of life features that are really appreciated, like controllable party members, which was not a thing in the original. Admittedly, there was a reason for it, but still not everybody was on board. Or how the tired mechanic was improved, making dungeon crawling feel like less of a hassle, and much more. Plus, on top of all that, the female protagonist, or FemC as she's colloquially referred to, isn't just a reskin of the male protagonist. No, she has a whole different personality that really shines in her dialogue choices, a new UI, new music, and a bunch of new social links that are widely considered to be even better than those of the original game. Also, she can date the guys if you're into that. Even Ken, which was a mistake. So it's no surprise that she quickly became a fan favorite throughout the community. That being said, it's not all sunshine and rainbows. The question of which version of Persona 3 is quote-unquote the definitive version is more complicated than it seems. Because for all the cool things that Portable adds, it's held back by the fact that it is a PSP game. So corners had to be cut to fit Persona 3 in it. The biggest compromise being the animated cutscenes and most of the 3D environments. What I mean by this is that the whole game outside of Tartarus, the main dungeon of the game, is rendered in a visual novel style as opposed to the full 3D look of the original game. There isn't even any proper world map for you to run around in, it's just flat images with character models slapped on top, and you inspect things with a simple cursor. Now this may seem like not such a big deal to some of you, but for others it is absolutely a deal breaker. So the discussion of which version of Persona 3 to play was never an easy one, and people still wage war about it to this day. Shit, people made a big fuss when Portable was the version chosen to be brought over to PC and consoles earlier this year, and to be fair, there is a proper reason for it. In short, Atlus doesn't own the original engine the game was made in. It was called Renderware, and EA acquired it, then killed it. Check this video to learn more, it's great. So they had to port their own games that ran in it to their own engine, and so Portable runs on an engine that was made by Atlus themselves, which is why it was an easy port. Whereas to port the original game, they'd have to rebuild it from the ground up, like how they did for Nocturne in Unity. Now, could they have done this for the original Persona 3? Yeah, but why? They were already working on a full remake after all. And so because of all this, it's always been a pipe dream of the fandom to get a proper, modern, definitive version of Persona 3, combining the features of both FES and Portable to finally get the ultimate Persona 3 experience. But is this even possible? I'd say yes. Bigger games than this hypothetical ultimate Persona 3 have been made, so probably given a bigger time frame, this game has been in development since at least Persona 5 Royal's release after all. Atlus quite possibly does have the necessary resources. It's not crazy to think that they can tackle a game of such scale. But the thing is, logic doesn't always apply to Atlus, and fans tend to have too many expectations of them. And so what ends up happening is basically this whole remake situation. Frankly, I think that the only reason this remake even exists is because of those surveys Atlus did that I mentioned at the start of the video. Seriously, it feels like they take the answers to those surveys quite literally. You see, the illogical decision that Atlus made this time is that they set out to remake the original Persona 3 experience. So on paper, this does not include the insert nor FemC, and any other improvement that came with the other two versions of the game. Because essentially they're saying that they're remaking the original 2006 version of the game, which is, as we've established, obsolete at this point. But let's take this one step at a time, because this whole ordeal started with rumors that had been circulating for a while that basically said the same thing. And then Atlus fucking accidentally dropped the trailer for the remake 3 days before it was supposed to be revealed at the Xbox showcase. And this trailer clearly didn't show anything about FemC or the answer, so if people hadn't lost hope before, they certainly did then. And so for those 3 days, people were losing their minds and Atlus couldn't say anything because it was all a mistake. So when the game was properly revealed, more information and interviews were released that painted a better picture of what this remake was going to be. And to say that the reactions were a bit exaggerated isn't too far off the mark, because people were straight up thinking that shit like being able to control your party members was out because it wasn't in the original. Because no, that'd be idiotic even for Atlus standards. The idea is to bring Persona 3 to a modern landscape, so not every single upgrade that FES or Portable brought has been scrapped. You will be able to control your party members, and I guess will also have her social link on the remake. But also, one thing that people were justifiably worried about was the fact that the male protagonist didn't have social links with every single party member like every game after 3. Instead, he got social links with characters that people straight up hate. And FemC replaced a lot of those social links with ones for party members, and also other new characters that people actually like. In total, 8 of the 22 social links were replaced. Losing the male party member social links is a shame because outside of just letting you date them, social links give them the chance to grow and evolve much more than with just the main story. And the team is aware of this loss, and so they've made new side stories revolving them to try and basically achieve the same results. Now, will this please everyone? Fuck no, they never will. They've rejected the one choice that would have presumably pleased everyone, so we're working with what Atlus is willing to do here. And at the very least, it seems less apocalyptic than what some people were making it out to be. Now, I don't bring all this up to defend Atlus or their actions, I just think it's hilarious that all of these mishaps occurred. This is Atlus's worst kept secret. In fact, as of me writing this, they seemingly let it slip that the game was also coming out on Switch. At this point, I think they're doing it on fucking purpose. Now, I mention all of this because it's important to have a general picture of the situation and how Atlus works as a company. Because knowing all of this, let me tell you what I think is going to happen with this remake. This is the first time Atlus is doing a remake of this scale in the Persona series. They've done remakes of the first 3 games in the series before, but in general they're much simpler games. This remake seems to be much bigger than those, and to be frank, from what we've seen, I think the remake looks pretty good. And don't get me wrong, I am upset that we're not getting a 100% perfect version of the game. Hell, I'm more upset that they seem to have remade Tartarus 1-to-1 with the original as per their vision of modernizing and yada yada. And while I do understand that making it more in line to what Persona 5 dungeons were like would require a big restructuring of the story and pretty much everything around it, I can't lie, I would have loved to see a new take on Tartarus. But also, I can't pretend that I'm not excited for what we are gonna get. And listen, this is something that I can say about all of the Atlus re-releases that I've played. I really think they are quite good. But the problem is that I don't quite agree with this business strategy of releasing a game and then improving upon that game. If Persona 6 ever gets released, you fucking know it's gonna get an updated version years later, but I'm an impatient prick that really likes Persona, so you bet your ass I'm gonna play the original when it releases. And then by the time the improved version comes out, they're gonna get me and I'm gonna play the shit out of it too. It's a problem and I'm part of it. I played Persona 5 and I loved it. Then Royal came out a few years later, so I also played it. And I also fucking loved it. I legitimately think that the things that Royal adds, especially the new characters and the new story, make the original game even better. And for Golden, I can say the same thing. Yes, even Marie and her stupid poems, shut up. And this is why I'm so conflicted. I don't like the model, yet they keep making good re-releases. And really nothing stops Atlus from changing their model and making these upgrades as DLC, just like how many other companies already do. Hell, even Game Freak seems to have moved to that model now, so it really shows just how far behind Atlus is. But the reality is, the model works for them. They probably don't see the need to change it. And because of that, it wouldn't surprise me if a few years down the line we get another Persona 3 remake, but this time including FemC and the Answer. Or maybe they actually do change and release the Answer as DLC, because if anything works easily as DLC, it's that. But I definitely don't think they would add FemC as DLC. And you know what the worst part is? It's gonna work. It'll do well, and I'll probably play it.